Hey everyone, my name is Nicole from Nomademy, and today I'm going to be talking about design thinking and Figma. So this is actually a presentation prepared for SIT, but I just thought why not practice and make this available to you guys who are following Nomademy on YouTube as well. So let's dive right into it. So just for an overview, these are the things we'll be talking about. Firstly, what is design thinking? I think it's really useful for me to go through some real case studies, some examples, some of the work that I've done, just to tie it all together and really define what is design thinking. And then we'll dive right into the Figma tools themselves. So I'll be talking about FigJam as well as Figma. And then I'll go deep into the crash course in part 3, where we'll talk about wireframing and prototyping as well. And then finally, we'll end off with a design challenge. So I think it'd be really important as well to really define and let you guys know the workshop objectives so you guys can look forward to the outcome of this workshop. So the first thing is to understand how design thinking can help you create a great product. I think as software engineers, really the goal is to create an excellent product, and design thinking can really help you reach that goal. And also exposure to real applications of the design thinking process. I think I really wanted to showcase some real examples, either from me or just industry examples. Also, ultimately, I hope that you guys become more confident in using Figma after this workshop. Okay, so I thought it'd be really important to start off with these examples. So I titled this slide Balancing Aesthetics and Usability in Design because I don't know about you, but when I look at these 3 images, I think, wow, it looks good. But how on earth do I even use, like, for example, the application in the middle? Are these black oval with the white words in the middle? Is that a button? Is that a tag? What is it really? Can I click on 5 stages, or what does this apply with the arrow in the top corner? It's just a bit confusing. And even when I look at the website on the left, why is the search blue button like at the bottom there, and why are there like multiple navigation bar icons? And even with the dashboard on the right, it's a bit more intuitive, but even still, why is that section at the top overlaid like that? And it's just really confusing, but we can all agree that it looks nice, but usability is definitely not there, in my opinion. So how do we create products that are actually user-friendly and address users' needs? The answer is design thinking. And with that, let's dive into the definition of design thinking. If you ask me, if I had to summarize this chunk of text into like 2 words, design thinking is problem solving. But I think this definition is a really nice summary of some of the key elements of design thinking. For example, design thinking is a nonlinear, iterative process that teams use to understand users and challenge assumptions. Also, to redefine problems and create innovative solutions to prototype and test. It's most useful to tackle ill-defined or unknown problems, and involves 5 phases. Empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. So when I think of the design thinking process, normally this kind of diagram comes to mind. And I think this diagram is really nice because it emphasizes these 2 key points, right? There are 5 phases. And lastly, of course, the implementation or the development itself, but also it's a very iterative process. Sometimes you move forward in the design thinking process, but then you have to go back to ideate again, or maybe go back to the drawing board because you defined the wrong problem, or you identified the wrong problem to solve, or you didn't really understand the user's needs completely. So that's why it can be an iterative process sometimes. So I also want to go dive a bit deeper to each of these phases. And actually, one thing you'll find even in the real world is that there's a lot of emphasis placed at the start. Sometimes we want to jump right into the designing and the developing, but actually a lot of the work is done at the start, because the better the work is at the start, the more complete and the more robust and solid, the less work there is later on, because you minimize having to go back and keep revising things. So it's really important to make sure you do a really good job at the start. So let's start with the first phase of the design thinking process, which is to empathize. So what is empathy, or in the, in the context of design thinking? It's to observe and develop an understanding of your target user's needs and problems. And to do this, to really empathize and understand your target's needs and problems, there are several UX methods. UX is user experience, but there are several methods in which you can really use to understand the user's needs. For example, doing user interviews, surveys, of course, or even secondary research, reading papers, competitor analysis, just seeing what other competitors are doing in the space, user personas, user stories, a whole bunch of methods. These aren't even all of it. But for today, I thought I'd just focus on these 5 because it's what I find myself, and even in whatever experience I've had so far, these seem to be the most common. So I thought let's just talk about it a bit more. Okay, so for user personas, what are user personas? User personas are fictional characters, but they also have to be inspired by real users because you want to make sure you're not just coming up with something out of thin air. So personas are created based upon your research in order to represent the target users that will be using your product or service, whatever it is that you are designing. This is a really classic example. It looks something like this. Basically, you're coming up with a profile, you're ideating or thinking about this target user's attributes, their goals, their pain points, their likes, their age, their bio, their personality, things like that. For one example, I thought I'd show you guys this, which I did for real for for a client in the past. These were some user personas which I created. So this client is a fintech company, and they basically want to create a platform for them to host hackathons and to allow participants to participate, that kind of thing. So for user personas, of course, I thought about the different roles, the different people who would be basically using this application. For example, the financial institutes, financial regulators, fintech companies, and also the developers themselves, and maybe even students from universities. So personas can be something like this as well, just thinking about their bio, what their age is, what kind of characteristics they have, what are some challenges they face, and what are some of their goals. So if you realize by thinking about the user persona in this way, it helps you empathize and really think about what are some of the challenges they may be facing. And when you think about these things, it really helps you ideate and think about the features to include in your solution as well. So that's why this step can be really, really important. Empathy mapping. This is another UX method to help us empathize as well. Empathy maps are used to gain a 360-degree perspective on what a user says, thinks, feels, and does. So it's fairly simple. Basically, this is usually the template that is used. You have the user persona or the user in the middle, and then you kind of have post-its, or it can be digital or physical, but basically you separate it into 4 quadrants: says, thinks, does, and feels. And then you just ideate and empathize with what this user might be saying, thinking, doing, and feeling. It's quite self-explanatory. Yeah. So let's move on to user journey mapping. What is user journey mapping? A user journey map, also known as a customer journey map, is a diagram that visually illustrates the user flow through your site, starting with initial contact or discovery and continuing through the process of engagement into long-term loyalty and advocacy. So it sounds like a lot of words, but usually a user journey map looks something like this. You define who the persona is, you think about the scenario they are walking through in this user journey, and then normally you have it in these different rows. So of course you think about their actions, what they might be feeling, their pain points at that point in time, and also opportunities, so possible solutions from whatever they're facing at that point in time. And what this green highlighted words mean, or what I was trying to convey, is the user journey map does not have to start within the application itself. It doesn't start the moment the person comes onto the application. It even starts way before, possibly like how they even encountered the problem in the first place, like someone telling them about the application, or maybe them even Googling or seeing it on social media. All this is all part of the user journey map as well, even before they download the actual app itself or whatever product or service it is. Yeah, so this is a really important part about user journey mapping. And I thought I'd show you guys another example. I guess it's from the same project. Okay, so for this particular project, because there are different users using this application, I also created 3 different user journey maps. Normally, I do it by phase, goal, doing, thinking and saying, feeling, opportunities and ideas, and then mood. So what this does is it helps me break down whatever that user is going through in different phases. For example, a financial institution has an internal discussion about the problem they want to solve. So as I mentioned before, this user journey map can start way before the user even hops on the website or whatever solution that you have. So it's something like this. And what I find very useful about the user journey map method is the opportunities section and the problems that come up for the user. You start to get really creative ideas on how to solve different problems that you really only realize and come up with when you break it down, when you break down the user journey into really small steps. So I think this is the strength of this UX method. Okay, now let's go to the next UX method, which is the user flow diagram. So what is user flow diagram? User flow is any path a customer could take through a website or application. So unlike the user journey map, the user flow diagram is only flows or only things that happen within the application or the solution itself. And the term user flow can also refer to a visualization or a map of that journey, sometimes with a flow chart or a UX flow. So user flow diagrams will help you avoid missing important steps in the process, make decisions and changes early on before you invest a lot of time in design, and also to get the feedback from stakeholders. For myself, what I find really helpful with user flow diagrams is it makes sure that I don't miss any important features or pages, because when you're thinking about the user flow diagram, you're thinking about the different buttons or the calls to action that the user might click on, and it really helps you make sure that everything is in the website or the app. So for example, a user flow could look like the image on the left, and if you look at on the right, it's actually these screens are called wireframes, but it also includes the user flow. So if you combine wireframe and user flow, it becomes wire flow. So diagrams like this are normally called wire flows, and it can be considered a user flow diagram as well. And lastly, I also wanted to talk a bit about this method, which is called competitor analysis. For me, this has been a really useful method when it comes to empathizing with users, because an important part, which sometimes gets overlooked, is users have habits already. In the UI UX world, we call it mental models. So for example, if I'm creating a new traveling website, I want to make sure that I'm looking at the existing traveling websites, because users are already primed and used to using traveling websites in a certain way. If I use Airbnb, but I want to design a traveling website to look like, I don't know, like Shopee, maybe it's going to be a very, very different experience. Users are going to really struggle to adopt the usage of your very innovative and new website. So you want to keep in mind the industry standards as well. So that's why competitor analysis is so important. Competitor analysis is a user experience research method to better understand similar websites your target users visit. So one example, which I did for an internship in Vietnam, was this one. So it was actually really a travel website called Holiday. So I took a look at their existing website, and then I really benchmarked it across several other websites. So I took a look at these websites' homepage, their explore itinerary page, their itinerary page itself, and also if there's any customization of trips feature. So I took a look at quite a few websites, and this was really quite a fun experience. And if you see all these bubbles here, oh, I also do want to mention all of these UI UX research is all done in Figma. So Figma is a very, very powerful tool, which you guys will get to really get hands-on experience later on. So yeah, one really cool thing about Figma is also the ability to comment on very specific points on the screen. So that's what I like to do as well, like to make use of comments, as you can see all over the screen. So this is competitor research or competitor analysis. Yes, so moving on to the next phase of the design thinking process, which is define. So after doing all the research, after really empathizing with your users, getting to understand what it is that they're facing, the define stage is really to condense all of that research into a very clear problem statement. So what is a good problem statement and why is it important? The define stage ensures you fully understand the goal of your design project. It helps you articulate your design problem and provides a clear objective to work towards. A meaningful problem statement will steer you in the right direction, helping you to kickstart the ideation process and work your way towards a solution. So what makes a good problem statement? A good problem statement is user-centered and user-focused. It focuses on the users and their needs, not on the product specifications or business outcomes. So you want it to be very user-centric and user-focused. So this is a template, for example, who, what, when, why. And here is an example. So Ryan needs to be able to receive feedback on his work in a foreign language class for the past month, because he often looks for ways to evaluate himself, since teachers do not always give him feedback on his progress. So this problem statement example clearly defines who. Typically, you don't have to make it a specific person. You can make it a very target specific group, but you define what they need, when and why they need it as well. So from there, we have a very clearly defined problem statement, and that's when we can go to the next stage, which is the ideate phase. And ideate phase is to generate potential solutions, to explore different possibilities without judgment. So this phase, you really just want to brainstorm, think of all the different ideas around that problem statement, which you defined earlier on. But also in the ideate phase, what can be really helpful from the problem statement is to convert it into a how might we question. So a problem statement is just a statement. It doesn't really give any call to action. So that's why having how might we questions can be really helpful. So some how might we question examples is how might we ensure more people pay their taxes before the deadline, or how might we help employees stay productive and healthy while working from home. And if we think about the problem statement from earlier, Ryan needs to be able to receive feedback on his work in the foreign language class over the past few months because he often looks for ways to evaluate himself. If we think about that in a how might we question example, how might we help Ryan get feedback on his foreign language class and progress over the past few months? See, immediately in this kind of how might we question, we start to grind our gears and think of solutions for Ryan, right? Because it's kind of like inviting us, to collaborate and think about solutions for Ryan. So I just want to take a moment to pause and take a look at a case study. This really is quite a throwback for me because this was a case study I did to get my internship at Shopee a few years back. Yeah, so they had a clearly defined challenge or problem statement, and basically I had to go through the design process to basically come up with a solution to their problem. So one thing which I want to talk a bit about in this part as well, just to give you guys some real life like exposure to design thinking, is in bigger companies, in MNCs, like I'm talking Shopee, e-commerce, Lazada, ByteDance, TikTok. When a company is that huge and you have such a huge user base, instead of doing user interviews, which is very one-to-one and it takes a lot of time, you start to look at data. So insights from data is really, really important in a lot of these big companies, and that's what I noticed as well in my time in Shopee. So I think that is why the design challenge that they gave is also really made use of that data element as well. So anyway, the challenge for Shopee was the homepage is the first touch point of an e-commerce platform, making it a very important feature as it impacts GMV directly. So this is they're already explaining why it's important. And also currently the click rate performance of each module on the Shopee homepage is assumed to be not good enough. The performance ranking is shown on the table on the right. So here they're showing like the data or like a snapshot of the performance. So the search bar is most clicked, but at the bottom we see like their official shop or their popular products is not clicked as much. So as a UI UX designer, I am tasked to redesign the Shopee homepage for these regions and to improve the performance of the overall click rate based on my experience and the limited information provided. So that's when I dived into really empathize with the users, right? So I did a mini user interview with my mom and my friend. And this affinity map is something which I didn't discuss just now, but it's also a way to really distill user interview feedback. You can put it all together in an affinity map like this just to categorize some of the key findings or the key feedback. But here we can see user persona, something that I used. Lisa Lim wants to buy things for her dorm, wants and needs, pain points and frustrations, and also the user journey map. So these are really methods which I used in my design thinking for Shopee. And long story short, I did get the internship, but I just wanted to really show you guys how it can be used in a design thinking process or challenge. Yeah, so this is just a small snapshot of the Shopee case study. Now I'm going to dive a bit into Figma tools. So in Figma, there are two key tools that I use a lot. It's FigJam and Figma. So Figma is, of course, the tool which we use for prototyping, but FigJam is an amazing tool when it comes to all these UX methods, which I explained above. So let's dive into FigJam. Of the interface, we can play around with the templates and plugins, and of course, let's get our hands a bit dirty with an activity, a little design challenge to practice some of the UX research methods above. And we can do all of this in FigJam. Okay, so let's hop onto FigJam. So I actually prepared this document for you guys. I'm not sure how many groups there are, but yeah, can split into different groups. And then you can see that I've pasted some of the slides from the presentation so far, and the design challenge is here. And yes, so let me introduce the FigJam interface. So over here, you can see there's timer, music, voting. So here you can, just include a timer if you want. You can add some ambient music. So all that is here. I don't use that too much, but they recently added AI as well if you ever need to copyright or add any information. Also, there are so many templates available on FigJam, so you really don't have to start from scratch, like user persona, for example, or even brainstorming, roadmaps, meeting templates, planning. There's so many, like it's really free for all and up to you guys to explore as well. There are really so many, but here are actually some which I picked out for you guys for the design challenge. So I have user persona, empathy map, and user journey map. Yes, and also if you notice this bar at the bottom, you have the select tool, the hand tool. Hand tool is mainly to drag, but you can really use it to select all these different elements on screen. You have marker, you have washi tape, you have eraser, all these different colors to work with. You have highlighter 1 to just draw some shapes, do some diagrams and mind mapping. This is where you do it. For example, I want to create a rectangle. I want to type some word there. I can change the font, the size of the text, and then let's say I want to duplicate it, but then I want to add some arrow in between. That's when I use this button here, or this tool here, to kind of join and connect these rectangles as such. Yeah, something like that. And also you're able to add text, of course. And one other thing which I love about FigJam is the ability to just spam a whole bunch of sticky notes. And it's nice because it labels your name at the bottom, so people know exactly who's responsible for that amazing idea. And also there's an ability to draw a table. But I thought another fun part to just introduce to you guys is the plugins. So there are a whole bunch of plugins created by the community and of course Figma's team themselves. But there are so many stickers you can paste just for fun. More templates also accessible here, of course, and widgets. So there's like to-do lists, or even if you want to play like a simple, cute game of rock, paper, scissors, brainstorming tracker, notes, organizational chart, a whole bunch of bar charts, and even dice. But one thing that I thought was really cute was this photo booth tool or plugin. It's quite fun, so you can use it to take photos with people using your desktop camera if you want. But yeah, it's really quite intuitive and simple, so I won't spend too much time talking about it. I'll really let you guys have more time just having fun testing out FigJam itself, and I'll probably give you guys like 10 minutes. I think that's ample time for you to just have some fun familiarizing yourself with FigJam and using some of the tools here, because this is honestly what I use whenever I need to do UX research. Okay, so let's imagine you guys have finished the activity, then we'll go into a short break. And then when you come back, we'll go straight back into the design thinking process because we left off at ideate. So let's talk a bit about prototyping. Testing, I won't talk too much, but prototyping is really important because that's where the meat of this workshop is, because I really want to get to talk to you guys about Figma. So for prototyping, it's to convert your ideas into mockups that can be visualized, presented, and tested. So as I mentioned just now about wireframes, it's another way to call it is low fidelity prototype. So a wireframe is a great way for getting quick feedback from key stakeholders that you're on the right track. So it's very rough. You don't even have to think of the text or the copy. You're just, you can use lorem ipsum. You can use shapes, placeholders. You don't have to come up with any of the actual content nor the branding. So colors, all of that doesn't matter. So wireframes are great if you're really pressed for time and you just want to make sure that you're getting the layout or the idea of the application right. And also for prototyping or high fidelity prototype, this is what they usually mean when they talk when clients or people talk about wanting a prototype done in Figma. This is what the end result really is. So they want a prototype that looks fairly similar to what the final product should look like. And you can even create an interactive prototype within Figma. So you can make it clickable, you can make buttons responsive, and all of that as well. All this can be done in Figma, so we'll be diving into that really soon. But before that, I also want to show a bit more case studies of how all of this comes together. And I also do want to talk a bit about in-house versus freelance, because I have been freelancing for over the past 2 years, but I also do have in-house experience because I guess as an intern, that's really what I was. I was an in-house designer. So I want to talk a bit about my Shopee experience and the kind of scope of work that I did in Shopee as an intern. So here I have another Shopee design challenge, which I did during my time in Shopee itself. It's really on the fill-in details page. So one thing that I do want to talk about is when you are working in-house, you'll realize that you don't really work on projects from like really the start before the app even exists to like it launching. That's usually maybe an experience you get in startups or maybe more so in freelance. But when it comes to working in-house, you are normally really optimizing a feature that is already there. And in this case, for Shopee, that was what I was doing. So the problem statement that came in was the problem identified is that the filling details page has the highest drop-off rates. So you know how when you want to book a flight and then you see like so many fields in the whole process and you're like, nah, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. So that was the problem that Shopee was facing as well. And some questions I asked myself was, is it because the time spent on this page is too long? If yes, why is it long? Why did users drop off? Were users not sure if they wanted to buy? Were users not sure what they were buying? Is there a need for a sense of urgency? So a whole bunch of questions that can really only be addressed when I go through the design thinking process. So when I talk about some of the UX methods, I remember when I mentioned secondary research. So one thing that I find really helpful as well is to take a look at what people are saying, either in online forums or even in the app feedback section or in the App Store comments, just information anywhere that will really help me understand the problem a bit better and the users a bit better. So these were some of the resources I looked at. And of course, competitor research, a really valuable thing as well, even within Shopee. So I took a look at their existing application and their flow, and I took a look at other applications. So trip.com, booking.com, Scoot, and a whole bunch of apps as well. And then I also did more research just to understand users' behaviors, because that's a whole important part of understanding and empathizing with users as well. Yeah, so from there, I came up with how might we questions. How might we make the product info section clearer to enable people to have more confidence? How might we make filling in section clearer for users to have clarity and confidence? How might we break down the info on the page so that it's more readable, quicker to fill in, maybe pre-fill, store information, smart to predict, things like that. So once we identified the problem and came up with this ideation question, it became a lot easier to ideate and wireframe. Yes, so that was basically my one of the projects I worked on during my time in Shopee. But another project that I wanted to talk about in freelance is this one. So you know how in Shopee it was a small, like, okay, quote unquote small feature in the application. For this freelance experience, it was me working on the entire kind of back end of this platform. So I really got to see it from start, ideating what's important in this platform, all the way to really designing and making it a really polished, high fidelity prototype. So this was actually the product or the project which I showed you guys just now, this one. So just now I showed you guys the user personas and the user journey map, but I also did competitor research and analysis for this client as well. So I took a look at other hackathon related websites, and ultimately I came up with the different pages or the prototype for this client as well. And of course, I tried to make it as neat as possible, separating it into the various pages, various features. I just wanted to give you guys a snapshot of how the design thinking process really helps me create a product that is actually what the client is looking for and what is actually needed by the target users. Yeah, so now this is a good time to go into Figma itself. So in this Figma crash course, we have about an hour, so that's plenty of time to really dive into Figma as much as we can. So first, I'm going to show you guys the interface, how to create new file, frames, pages, shapes, vector drawings, images, masks, text. Components and variants is extremely important in the industry, actually. If you want to really level up your Figma game, this is one way. Another way is auto layout. This was actually something I learned when I got into Shopee. Like, Shopee really helped me with this. Prior to that, I was just honestly using Figma however I wanted to. which really wasn't very efficient. And also prototyping, exporting, and dev mode. I thought it'd be interesting to talk a bit about that as well. So let's now go into the hands-on activity. So I actually prepared a Figma page for you guys as well. So one thing I want to share about is frames and layout grid. So if you look at the interface here, there's this thing called layout grid, because you can use it to come up with different layouts, because sometimes it's really important to take note of the paddings and spaces. So if you are in the midst of designing and you want to have that guide as you design, this is a really helpful tool for that. Also, I wanted to talk about auto layout in this video as well. So for auto layout, this is one example from the Apex website, which I showed earlier, which I did for a client as a freelancer. So in auto layout, the amazing thing is, you know what, let me show you guys like auto layout versus not auto layout. Okay, so this is with auto layout, right? You see how everything is evenly spaced, and when I click on it, it's all part of different frames already. And what the amazing thing about this is, the spacing is all auto layouted, so it's really part of the name. Whereas if it's not auto layout, if everything is just as it is, then I can move everything. If everything were just placed as it is without being auto layout, it becomes a lot more difficult to rearrange. Because if I want to rearrange this section, like let's say I want prizes to be above general information, I'm going to have to drag it, and then I'm going to have to make sure I click each element and then drag it below. It becomes really difficult to make quick changes to the layout. So this was one thing which really helped me become a much more efficient designer. So in that light, how are you making a search bar? I'm going to be talking about components and variants now, so as well as auto layout and responsive design. So let me show you guys how I used to make search bars. So remember how to make a rectangle? I'm going to make a rectangle. It'd be like I don't know what the width should be, like I guess 94. Okay, then let's put a text. Like I can change my fonts here. So let's say I just go with a classic Helvetica regular, make it 40 just so it's readable. Okay, so let's say, yeah, that, can I be honest, this was honestly how I made a search bar, but let me tell you how the pros do it. Okay, so it's duplicate. So here you have your text. That is the start. And one really cool shortcut that I want to tell you guys about is Shift A. That's immediately how you create an auto layout. And here you can see that it's already in auto layout mode. And this 10 just means that's the spacing you have between the end of the word to the end of the auto layout box, if you will. You can change it here really quickly. Like let's say I want a 40, and let's say here I want, yeah, let's keep it at 10. And this basically just means where you want the item to be positioned. Do you want it left aligned, right aligned, center, top, or even bottom? It's really a beautiful thing. And here you can actually fill. So let's say I want the fill to be the same colors here. Okay, so the beautiful thing about auto layout as well is it's responsive. Because I positioned it in the center, it's always going to be centered, no matter how much I kind of play around with the width of this frame. Okay, and here I can also make it, I can justify the text however I want. And let's say I want it to be left aligned, right? So let's keep it there. Yeah, so this is how we would normally create a proper search bar, or even a field of for any text, really. That is for search bar. And right, so I wanted to talk about best practice is, of course, to name your elements here really well, just so it's really neat and easy to search for. So if you want to search for anything, it's simply Command F as well. You can find like search bar. So where's my search bar? It is there. Yeah. And I also wanted to talk about components and variants. So if you want to make this a component, okay, first of all, what is a component and variant? It is hard to explain, but let me show you. So if I want to make this a component, the shortcut would be Option Command K, but another way is to click this button here. That makes this a component. What happens, and really this is the beauty of Figma, is let's say I have a lot of these variants throughout my design. So let's say I've designed a lot of different pages and I have this component used across all the different pages, right? Because the search bar is often across multiple pages. But then the client comes back and tells me, Nicole, I don't want the search bar fill color to be gray. Like, it doesn't make sense. It's not beautiful. Can I have it in white? And typically, if this wasn't a component or variant, that would mean that I would have to go into each and every page and change each and every search bar color into white. But because this is a component, because I was a smart UI UX, or because I was a smart Figma designer, I can just go straight to a component, just change this to white, and I don't even have to worry about changing each of the variants individually, because I've already done it with the component, and the component is linked to all the variants. So that's the beautiful thing about Figma, really. Yeah, so that is basically components and variants. I have no idea how to put that in a definition, so I thought it's much easier to just show you guys the example. So that is for components and variants auto layout. Maybe let's skip the hands-on activity. Let's go straight into the design challenge. So let's put everything together. So these are just the challenge rules on the day itself. And the design challenge statement is a graduation trip planning solution. So university graduates often want to plan graduation trips, but are often too busy to plan and rarely know where to go and what to do. Everyone plans trips differently and has different wants and budgets. So traveling involves many decisions, hence the indecision and delayed discussions often lead to flight ticket prices increasing and a whole bunch of different problems. So this is why this problem is important to be solved. So now that you have this design challenge, you guys can go into Figma itself, create a new file as mentioned, and then you can really go ham, get started to try your hands at Figma, create frames for your mobile application or your desktop. You don't have to go through the whole design thinking process, although if you do, that'd be awesome. This part is just to really familiarize yourself with trying out creating the prototypes and the different things in Figma itself. Yeah. So you can decide whether you want to create an app or a website for this really small design challenge. Okay, so let's say you've done that, and then we come back, and now I just want to conclude this entire workshop with the end goal of design thinking. So ultimately, design thinking is important because you really want to start with answering the user's needs, right? You want to problem solving, make sure you're creating a product that people actually want and the market actually needs. And ultimately, you want your product to be desirable, feasible, and viable. So this is the ultimate goal, and a great place to start is always with design thinking. So thank you so much. And if you got any feedback and questions, please scan the QR code or go to slido.com. And I really appreciate it if you follow Nomademy on Instagram or find us on YouTube. I'm trying to post a bit more there. But yeah, follow us on Nomademy on Instagram to stay connected. And I really appreciate any feedback. This is my first time running this workshop, so I am nervous. but any feedback is very much welcome, because I really want to make sure I keep improving and making it a really good workshop for you guys and for future students. Yeah, thank you.